My parents let me miss Thanksgiving to work Black Friday, then mocked my gifts. So I sold everything and left them with nothing but silence. I'm a 21-year-old college student, and if there's one thing I've learned about my family, it's that responsibility is treated like punishment. I've been the helper since I was old enough to hold a screwdriver. When something breaks, I fix it. When someone forgets, I remember. And when things go wrong, I'm the one expected to make it right. My parents like to say I'm mature for my age, but what they really mean is that I do the work no one else wants to do. Meanwhile, my sister, Riley, glides through life like she was born under a spotlight. She's 19, spoiled to the bone, and somehow always the victim. If she forgets to fill the gas tank, I'm the one driving out in the rain with a jerry can. If she messes up her assignments, Mom blames her anxiety and asks me to help rewrite them. I used to think that was love, being needed. But lately it just feels like being used. Last Thanksgiving was the moment I started seeing things differently. I spent the entire morning cleaning, setting the table, and helping Dad with the turkey while everyone else lounged around watching football. When we finally sat down to eat, my mom smiled and said, "We couldn't have done it without Riley. She made the mashed potatoes." I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but no one else did. That night, while washing the mountain of dishes Riley left behind, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window, tired eyes, cracked hands, and a fake smile. I realized something that scared me. This was my role. The invisible backbone. The unpaid labor. The helper, not the favorite. I remember thinking, maybe next year will be different. But deep down, I think I already knew it wouldn't be. This year, my retail job posted the holiday schedule 2 weeks early. I scanned the list 3 times, hoping to see my name off duty for Thanksgiving. But there it was. Friday, 6 a.m. to midnight. Black Friday, the biggest, most chaotic day of the year. I wasn't even surprised. I was the only part-timer who never complained about extra hours. The reliable one. Still, a small part of me wanted something different this time. So I asked my parents if we could celebrate Thanksgiving a day early. I tried to keep my tone light, casual. Maybe we could do dinner Wednesday night? I don't want to miss out. I'll never forget the look they gave me. My dad smirked and said, "Work comes first, right?" "That's what you always say." My mom chimed in, "It's just one day, sweetheart. We'll save you some pie." And Riley, always ready to twist the knife, laughed. "You're basically married to your job anyway." Their words stung more than I wanted to admit. I didn't ask for much, just a small shift in plans so I could feel included. But in their eyes, I was the dependable mule, someone whose needs came second, or third, or not at all. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. "It's just one day," my mom's voice echoed. But it wasn't one day, it was every day. Every time they put Riley's comfort over my effort. Every time they joked that I took life too seriously. When Thanksgiving came, I told myself it was fine. I'd work my shift, make some extra cash, and maybe we'd laugh about it later. But as I clocked in that morning, surrounded by strangers and chaos, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just agreed to miss something I'd never get back. Thanksgiving night didn't feel like a holiday. It felt like a punishment. The moment I walked into the store, the fluorescent lights buzzed like angry bees, and the air already reeked of stale coffee and impatience. Customers flooded in before the doors even opened, clawing at deals like it was survival of the fittest. My manager, Brad, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're my dependable guy tonight, right? Need you on register and recovery." Translation: "You're the only one I trust to clean up everyone else's mess." Hours blurred together in a haze of ringing scanners and forced smiles. A woman yelled at me because we ran out of a $50 TV. A dad cursed me out because the last PlayStation bundle sold seconds before he reached the counter. I just kept saying, "I'm sorry, sir. I understand." Over and over, until the words lost meaning. During my 10-minute break, I finally pulled out my phone. Nothing. No missed calls, no texts. I scrolled through social media, and there it was. Riley's post. My family gathered around the dinner table, all smiles and perfect lighting. My mom had captioned it, "So thankful for my wonderful family." Wonderful family. I wasn't even in the frame, something inside me twisted. I'd traded laughter and warmth for fluorescent lights and corporate playlists. I'd told myself it was fine, that it was just one dinner, but seeing them there without me, it hit differently. When I got home past midnight, my apartment was cold and quiet. The fridge hummed softly when I opened it, only old leftovers and bottled water waiting for me. I sat at the table, scrolling through their photos again, the glow of my phone reflecting off my tired face. That's when I realized I'd been replaced, not by a person, but by convenience. A few days after Thanksgiving, my mom called. Her voice was light, casual, like nothing had happened. "We missed you at dinner, honey," she said, not sounding like she missed me at all. Before I could respond, she added, "But we'll make it up to you at Christmas, okay? We'll all be together then." It wasn't an apology. It was a promise wrapped in convenience, but I clung to it anyway. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of warmth. Christmas. Maybe that would be my reset button, the moment they saw how hard I'd been trying. I threw myself into work, volunteering for extra shifts, covering lazy coworkers, and picking up double hours. Each paycheck felt like a small step toward redemption. I made a list of gifts that mattered. For Mom, her favorite perfume, the one she'd once said was too expensive to buy anymore. For Dad, a set of restored vintage tools I found online, because he'd taught me how to use them back when things between us still felt like love. And for Riley, a designer scarf I'd seen her obsess over on Instagram. It cost more than I should have spent, but I wanted her to know I noticed her. Even when she didn't notice me, every time exhaustion hit, I imagined Christmas morning, the smiles, the laughter, the maybe finally thank yous. I pictured Mom hugging me, Dad patting my shoulder, Riley surprised for once. It became my emotional anchor. As the lights went up around the city and carols filled the store speakers, I told myself that all the loneliness, the missed dinners, the ignored calls, it would all be worth it. Because Christmas would fix everything that Thanksgiving broke, at least, that's what I needed to believe. By the time I pulled into my parents' driveway on Christmas Eve, snowflakes were falling slow and heavy, like the world had decided to move in slow motion. My car trunk was packed with neatly wrapped gifts, each one chosen with care, each ribbon tied with hope. I stood outside for a second, breathing in the cold air, trying to calm the jitter in my chest. I wanted this night to be good. I needed it to be good. Mom opened the door before I could knock. "You're late," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. I held up the bag, still smiling. Traffic was bad and my shift ran long. She sighed like I'd inconvenienced her. Dad barely looked up from the couch, where he was nursing a drink and half watching a game. Riley sat cross-legged on the floor, sparkling jewelry draped over her wrists. "Look what Jake got me," she said before I could even put the gifts down. "Real gold," I forced a grin. "That's nice, Riley. Merry Christmas." When I handed out the presents, I felt like a kid again, hopeful, desperate for approval. Mom peeled open the perfume box, sniffed it, and exchanged a look with Dad. "Perfume from the discount mall?" He chuckled. Mom shrugged. At least he tried. It was supposed to be a moment of love. Instead, it was humiliation wrapped in shiny paper. My chest burned, but I laughed it off, pretending it didn't sting. "Yeah," I said, forcing lightness into my tone. "Gotta love those mall deals." Riley didn't even look up from her phone. Dad went back to his drink. The house was full of twinkling lights and holiday songs, but all I could hear was silence. The kind that follows when you realize no matter how much you give, some people only see the price tag. Dinner should have been a comfort, a reset after the awkward gift exchange, but instead it turned into a performance. The table was dressed beautifully, candles flickering, silverware shining, and the smell of roasted ham filling the room. For a second, I thought maybe things would calm down, but then Riley spoke. "So how's the little retail world treating you?" she said with a teasing smile, spearing a piece of asparagus. "Bet it's hard keeping people happy when they're fighting over half-price blenders." My parents laughed, and my dad added, "Hey, don't knock it. Our very own Mr. Retail Worker keeps America running." Mom joined in, swirling her wine. "He's practically the family provider," she said, dripping sarcasm. All those minimum wage paychecks really hold us together. I chuckled weakly, trying to hide the burn rising up my neck. "It's not forever," I said. "I'm saving up for school," Dad smirked. "Ah, so we'll still be waiting for that degree next Christmas too?" He winked at Riley, who giggled like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. I kept eating in silence, tasting nothing. Every bite felt like chewing on resentment. They didn't see the exhaustion behind my eyes, the double shifts, the missed sleep, the ache in my hands. To them, my effort was a punchline, proof that I'd always be the one holding things together while they laughed from the sidelines. After dinner, we exchanged the rest of the gifts. Riley's boyfriend got praised for knowing her taste. My parents' friends received polite thank yous through text. My gifts were barely acknowledged, shoved aside with mumbled thanks. When I looked around the table, the lights, the laughter, the clinking glasses, it hit me hard. They'd never see me as anything more than the help. And worse, I had trained them to treat me that way. The drive back to my apartment was the quietest one of my life. No music, no podcasts, no background noise, just the soft hum of the engine and the echo of every cruel word replaying in my head. The road stretched out in front of me like an endless ribbon of black glass, and the glow from the streetlights blurred through my windshield, smeared by exhaustion and unshed tears. I kept hearing my dad's voice, Mr. Retail Worker. Riley's mocking laughter, my mom's dismissive tone. I told myself for years that if I just kept giving, kept showing up, kept sacrificing, they'd see me. They'd love me the way I loved them. But the truth was settling in, cold and clear. In my family, giving wasn't noble. It was weakness. Every mile felt like peeling back another layer of denial. I thought about the countless times I'd fixed their cars, paid their bills when they were short on cash, covered for Riley when she messed up. And not once, not a single time, did they ever say thank you without a hint of mockery. Somewhere between the freeway exit and my street, something in me hardened. I realized I'd been living my life trying to earn love that was never freely offered, and if I kept doing it, I'd spend the rest of my life mistaking servitude for affection. The city lights grew smaller in my rearview mirror as I whispered to myself, something has to change. It wasn't anger, not yet. Just clarity, a quiet, heavy kind of truth that sat deep in my chest. By the time I parked outside my apartment, I knew one thing for sure. This version of me, the one desperate for scraps of affection, wasn't coming into the new year. A week after Christmas, I was scrolling through my phone during a quiet morning before work. I wasn't looking for anything, just mindlessly swiping through posts, half awake, half distracted. And then I saw it, Riley's face glowing on my screen, framed by turquoise water and white sand. The caption read, "Finally taking time to recharge after a tough semester, bound." I froze. The photo didn't just sting, it burned. I looked at the tagged location. A 5-star resort, Ocean View Suite. The kind of place that costs more per night than I make in a week. My jaw tightened as I clicked through the comments. Mom had written, "So proud of you, sweet girl. You deserve it after all your hard work." Dad had added, "Glad we could help you relax after such a stressful year." Help her. I felt my stomach drop. A few months earlier, my parents had called me in a panic about urgent home repairs. Said the water heater was busted and the pipes were leaking. They'd begged me to lend them money, promising to pay it back after the holidays. I'd wired the cash the same day, no questions asked. Now I knew exactly where that money went. Not to repairs, to this. To Riley sipping cocktails by the ocean, wearing the same sunglasses she mocked me for buying on sale. The betrayal hid in waves, first disbelief, then humiliation, then something darker. Rage, maybe, or exhaustion wearing a new face. I didn't text or call them. I just sat there scrolling through every sun-drenched photo, every fake smile. They hadn't just used me. They'd laughed while doing it. I didn't explode. Not yet, but something in me began to shift. Quietly, methodically. I started thinking, not about getting even, but about getting out. After that morning, I went silent. I didn't text. I didn't call. When my mom's name lit up my phone a few days later, I just stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then my dad. Then Riley. I let them all go to voicemail. The messages piled up, some casual, some concerned, some annoyed, but I didn't listen. I couldn't. Every word from them would have been another hook pulling me back into the same web I was finally ready to escape. Instead, I threw myself into work and saving money. I picked up every available shift, stashed every extra dollar, and started planning quietly. No grand speech, no goodbye scene, just a slow, invisible exit. I canceled my spring semester housing lease and transferred my job to a store in another city. The new manager approved it with a single email. No one knew except me Then came the cleansing. I started selling everything connected to them. The old dining set they lent me when I moved out? Gone. The framed family photos I couldn't bring myself to hang? Packed away and sold with the frames. Even the unused gifts. The expensive scarf I'd bought for Riley. The perfume box still in its wrapping. Found their way onto online listings. Each sale felt like peeling off a layer of guilt I didn't realize I'd been carrying. The guilt of being the fixer. The provider. The emotional sponge for a family that never gave anything back. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was survival disguised as minimalism. A quiet rebellion with every transaction. I started to feel lighter, like I was stepping out of someone else's story. For the first time, I didn't feel trapped. I felt free, and deep down I knew. Disappearing wasn't running away. It was finally walking towards something that was mine. It was a Sunday morning when I heard the knock. Sharp, impatient, familiar. I opened the door, and there they were. My parents standing in the hallway like they owned the place. My mom had that rehearsed smile she used whenever she wanted something. My dad crossed his arms like he was preparing for battle. "We've been calling you for weeks," my mom said, brushing past me without waiting for an invitation. Ignoring family isn't a good look, you know. I stood there frozen, watching them make themselves comfortable in a space that had finally started to feel peaceful. "I needed some time," I said quietly. "You wouldn't understand," Dad snorted. "Time? You've had 21 years of our time. We raised you, fed you, gave you everything. And this is how you repay us? Silence?" The words hit like static, loud, meaningless noise. I took a deep breath and said what I'd been holding in for years. "You didn't raise me to feel loved. You raised me to feel useful. Every time I tried to make you proud, you turned it into a joke. Do you have any idea what that does to a person?" Mom laughed, a short, cruel sound. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. You're too sensitive. We didn't raise a victim. Something in me went still. Like a switch had been flipped off. I realized then they'd never understand. Not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to." The argument dragged on, circling the same accusations, the same gaslighting, until my dad finally said, "We'll be at home if you decide to grow up." They walked out, slamming the door behind them. The silence afterward wasn't relief, it was hollow. I sank to the floor, staring at the door, waiting for tears that never came. For the first time in my life, I didn't cry. I just felt empty. Like my hope for their approval had finally died quietly in that room. I left 2 weeks later. No dramatic farewell, no goodbye dinner, just a quiet move out in the early hours of a gray morning. My car was packed with only what mattered, a few bags of clothes, my laptop, and the savings I'd built piece by piece. Everything else, the furniture, the dishes, the memories, I left behind. The new city wasn't glamorous. My apartment was small, the kind of place where you could stand in the kitchen and reach the living room in 2 steps. But it was mine. No one barged in uninvited. No one made jokes at my expense. The silence here wasn't cold, it was clean. I transferred to a new store, and on my first day, no one knew who I was. No one called me the dependable one or guilted me into double shifts. I was just another employee, blending in among strangers who smiled without expectation. It felt freeing. Days turned into weeks, and slowly I started to rebuild, not my reputation, not my family's approval, but myself. I learned to enjoy small things, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the walk home under streetlights, the sound of rain hitting my window without anyone shouting in the background. I wasn't thriving yet. My savings were tight, my meals simple, my days long, but for the first time in years, I wasn't apologizing for wanting peace. Some nights, I still thought about them, about what they might say when they realized I was gone. But I didn't reach for my phone anymore. I'd traded chaos for calm, guilt for quiet, and maybe, just maybe, that was the first real gift I'd ever given myself. It had been nearly 4 months since I'd heard a single word from my family. The quiet had settled into my life like a familiar song, soft, steady, almost comforting. Then one evening, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in forever, Riley. For a second, I just stared at the screen. Part of me thought about ignoring it, but curiosity, old habits maybe, won. I answered. "Hey," she said, her voice oddly hesitant. "It's been a while." I leaned back in my chair. "Yeah, it has." There was a pause, the kind that carries guilt. Then she said it. Mom and Dad are kind of struggling right now. Dad's hours got cut and Mom's medical bills are piling up. They're trying to hold things together, but I closed my eyes. I could already hear where this was going. They need help, she continued. And well, you're the responsible one. You always figure things out. The words hit like deja vu, but instead of pain, I felt this strange, quiet clarity. Responsible one, fixer, provider. The same labels they'd chained to me my entire life. The same roles they used when it was convenient. I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, just disbelief at how predictable it all was. I can't help, I said softly. Riley hesitated. Wait, what? You're serious? I'm serious, I replied. They made their choices. I've made mine. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then she muttered, Wow, you've really changed. I had to, I said. And then, without anger or apology, I hung up. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't bitterness. It was peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop bleeding for people who never noticed you were bleeding in the first place. It didn't take long after Riley's call for the flood to begin. First came a voicemail from my mom, her voice trembling just enough to sound pitiful. We miss you, she said, but you can't stay mad forever. Family is family, no matter what. I listened once, then hit delete. The next day, there was another one, this time from Dad. You're being childish. This silent treatment isn't helping anyone. Delete. Then more. Guilt layered over manipulation, week after week, like they were building a staircase made of apologies that never actually said sorry. At first, I thought ignoring them would feel empowering. But it didn't, it just felt necessary. I didn't block them, though. Part of me wanted to keep the proof, the sound of their voices finally reaching for something they'd always taken for granted. Me. Then, through a mutual friend from our hometown, I heard what had been happening. My parents had started selling off things to stay afloat. The expensive furniture, the heirloom watch Dad once said I wasn't responsible enough to inherit. Even Mom's collection of decorative silverware she used to brag about. They were liquidating their pride piece by piece, and the irony? Some of those were the very things they once mocked me for fixing, repairing, or suggesting they save for emergencies. I remembered Dad laughing when I said, You never know when you'll need it. Turns out, he did. But as much as poetic justice this should have felt like, it didn't. There was no satisfaction, no they got what they deserved moment, just clarity. They weren't villains, just people who never learned empathy until the world stopped cushioning their cruelty. And maybe, in a twisted way, this was the lesson they'd refused to hear when I tried to speak. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I just pressed play on their newest voicemail. And then deleted that one too. One night, after another string of voicemails I didn't bother to open, I sat at my small kitchen table with a pen and a blank sheet of paper. I hadn't planned on writing them, it just happened. The words started spilling out like something I'd been holding in for years. I told them everything I'd never had the courage to say face to face. How every joke at my expense chipped away at who I was. How their constant belittling made me believe my worth depended on what I could do, not who I was. I told them how Riley's pedestal was built from the weight of my silence, and how every time I tried to earn their pride, I only ended up proving I was the family's tool, not its son. I wrote about the holidays, the empty tables, the long shifts, the loneliness disguised as duty. I told them I used to think hard work would make them love me, that every sacrifice would buy me a seat at the table that was always waiting for someone else. By the time I finished, the page was covered in uneven handwriting and water stains I didn't bother to wipe away. At the bottom, I wrote one final line. I'm done trying to earn love that was never freely given. I folded the letter, sealed it, and mailed it the next morning. No return address, no expectation. It wasn't for them, it was for me. Days passed, then weeks, then months. No reply, no call, no acknowledgement that it ever arrived, but for once the silence didn't hurt. It just confirmed what I already knew. They'd only ever listen when it served them. A year passed faster than I expected. Suddenly, it was Thanksgiving again, but this time there was no dread, no guilt, no forced smiles waiting on the other side of a long drive. I spent the morning helping my coworker Jenna set up a potluck in the break room. She'd brought her grandmother's stuffing recipe. Our manager brought a store-bought pie he proudly called homemade. The smell of turkey, cinnamon, and cheap coffee filled the air. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. We laughed over burnt rolls, swapped stories about nightmare customers, and clinked paper cups of soda like it was champagne. For the first time, Thanksgiving didn't feel like an obligation. It felt like belonging. No one expected anything from me except to be there. At one point, I caught myself watching everyone around the table, people from different states, backgrounds, and stories, and it hit me. This was the family I'd built without even realizing it. People who listened, who appreciated small efforts, who didn't measure worth by what you could give them. Later that night, we went to a nearby diner, still in our uniforms, laughing about whose cooking nearly caused a fire. When the waitress asked if we wanted dessert, I ordered a slice of pumpkin pie, just because I could. As I ate, I thought about last year. The fluorescent lights, the silence, the loneliness I thought would never end. And now here I was, full, not just from food, but from something deeper. Peace. One of my coworkers leaned over and asked, "Hey, you doing anything with your family this weekend?" I smiled, not bitterly, not sadly, just softly. "No," I said. "I already did." They nodded, understanding more than I needed to explain. I looked out the diner window at the quiet street, lights reflecting off the glass, and whispered to myself, "I'm thankful for silence." It took me a long time to understand that the greatest gift I ever gave my parents wasn't the money I lent them, or the errands I ran, or the endless hours I spent trying to earn their approval. It was me, my presence, my patience, my forgiveness, my loyalty. And that's the one thing they'll never get back. For years, I believed that love was proven through sacrifice, that if I worked harder, stayed quieter, or forgave faster, it would finally be enough. But it never was. They took, and when I finally stopped giving, all that was left between us was silence. Now I don't see that silence as punishment. It's peace. It's boundaries. It's freedom. The version of me that begged for scraps of affection doesn't exist anymore. In his place is someone who understands that love, when it's real, doesn't have to be earned. It's offered freely, without conditions or guilt. That night, I sat on my bed with my phone in my hand. My parents' numbers glowed on the screen for a long moment before I pressed delete. Then Riley's, no hesitation. Just a deep breath and an exhale that felt like release. I took a small box from my closet, the one filled with old photos, birthday cards, and pieces of a childhood I used to cling to, and sealed it shut. I didn't throw it away. I just put it in the back of the closet where it could finally rest. When I stepped outside, the city was quiet. Cold air brushed my face, and for the first time, I didn't feel the weight of anyone else's expectations on my shoulders. The silence I left behind wasn't revenge. It was the truth, echoing louder than any words I could ever say.